Have you ever prayed with like absolutely all of your heart, only to be met with what feels like an endless quiet? You wait days, months, maybe even years, and still, nothing changes? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dive right into one of the deepest spiritual mysteries we face. We'll be relying strictly on ancient biblical texts to unpack what they actually reveal about waiting, faith, and timing.
To start things off, we really have to acknowledge the deeply human pain of waiting. Because when heaven appears silent, these incredibly difficult questions immediately pop up in our minds. The biggest one, has God forgotten me? It's such a heavy, isolating feeling, right? To look at your circumstances, see absolutely zero movement, and genuinely wonder if your requests have just slipped into some cosmic void.
And when nothing seems to change despite all our hope and trust, it's completely normal to experience these rapid-fire doubts. We almost instantly turn the lens inward. We start asking, wait, am I praying the wrong way? Is there some formula I missed? And honestly, this doubt can make the silence feel even heavier, completely transforming our waiting period into this intense time of anxiety and self-questioning. Which ultimately leads us to the biggest question of the whole shebang. Does God actually hear every prayer? Or is there a specific reason some answers seem intentionally delayed? Well, what is incredibly comforting to realize is that you are absolutely not alone in asking this. For thousands of years, faithful people, we're talking prophets, kings, ordinary men and women, they have wrestled with these exact same questions during their own incredibly long seasons of waiting. So let's move into our first section, the silence of God and stories of waiting. The crucial takeaway here is that throughout the Bible, delayed answers and entirely unanswered prayers are not necessarily the same thing. Silence does not always mean absence. I mean, that is a massive shift in perspective, isn't it? Sometimes the absolute hardest part of faith isn't making the request itself, but actually continuing to trust when we can't yet see the outcome. And the texts brilliantly illustrate this. Even the most well-known accounts of great faith include these long, grueling periods of waiting where the future remained entirely uncertain. Take Abraham, for example. He waited many, many years for the son he was promised. Or Joseph, who had to endure intense betrayal and literal imprisonment long before his circumstances finally flipped. And then there's Hannah, who prayed persistently and with deep anguish before the birth of her son. The point is, none of these answers came quickly or easily. The text shows us something fascinating. Waiting wasn't just some roadblock for these figures. It was the very process that shaped their character, their perseverance, and their hope. The waiting didn't just delay the story, it actually became the story. And that's not because waiting was easy, but because the crucible of waiting fundamentally forged who they were meant to become. Okay, moving right along to section 2, expectations versus reality. So we often expect an outcome that perfectly matches our exact request, but the biblical reality shows us that a closed door, a delay, or a completely different path might ultimately unfold. Think about it. A closed door might actually reveal an unexpected opportunity, and a delay might create the exact space you needed for growth. An answer, and our strict expectation of what that answer should look like, well, they're rarely the same thing. Which brings us to section 3, how waiting changes us. Throughout Christian history, so many people describe a really specific progression of unexpected growth during these seasons of delayed answers. First up, it deepens compassion for others. Second, it increases wisdom. Third, it teaches resilience, practically proving you can endure way more than you thought you could. Fourth, it reveals your true priorities by stripping away all the superficial stuff. And finally, it strengthens relationships, really bonding us with the people who walk beside us. Looking back, a lot of people realize they experienced this profound growth they simply couldn't see in the moment. You know, faith is easy when answers come instantly. It is far, far more difficult when absolutely nothing appears to happen. But the biblical text emphasizes that waiting is rarely meaningless. Actually, it's a deeply active season where profound spiritual and personal transformation is actively taking place. Let's head into section 4, when questions still remain. We have to be honest here. The Bible does not pretend this struggle is simple. Not at all. It thoroughly documents these incredibly raw emotions, normalizing the fact that sincere questions are a core part of the story. If you read these ancient pages, they are absolutely filled with honest cries of confusion, deep grief, and people openly lamenting and wondering why God seems so distant. The texts simply do not shy away from the real pain of unanswered prayer. And this brings us to a really powerful realization. Faith is not the absence of questions. Let me say that again. It is often the courage to keep seeking God even while questions remain. True faith involves learning how to trust while we endure the mystery of the wait. Sometimes answers come fast, sometimes they come painfully slow, and sometimes, well, the mystery just remains.
As we wrap up this explainer today, I want to invite you to reflect on your own life. Have you ever experienced a prayer that seemed unanswered for years? Just ask yourself, what did your season of waiting actually teach you? Because perhaps the greatest challenge we face isn't simply waiting for the answer itself, but discovering who we become while we wait. Thank you so much for exploring this ancient wisdom with me, and I'll see you in the next explainer.